Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Hema Ramki. Thanks again for inviting us into your homes, and thanks for staying with us. Well, we're here at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. We're enjoying the beautiful sunrise. It is well into the morning. It's well after the 8 o'clock hour. The People's Budget, that's what the Prime Minister announced on Saturday at the pre-budget rally. Joining us on set, Michael Anisette, the President of NATUC and also the President of the SWWTU, Labour, its perspective on what's going to happen today, productivity, competitiveness, understanding that we need to have a social compact. Barbados actually ranked 44th in the Global Competitiveness Index. Trinidad and Tobago, well, I think we're about 84. Jamaica, 87. Why is there this disparity? Is it the curse of the Dutch disease, the dependency on oil and natural gas, not understanding the need to be productive, competitive, not understanding the need to appreciate each other? Also the gaps that exist in our society, the rich and the poor, the expenditure profile that government expects to put forward today, revenue generation capability of our country. Some tough decisions need to be made. Mr. Anisette, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning to you and the listening public.
Big day today. The budget is going to be announced. What are you, as President of NATUC, President of the SWWTU, you're one of the key personalities in the labour movement. What are you hoping to hear today?
Well, let me first say that one of our recommendations that we made to the Honourable Minister of Finance, which is the conclusion of all outstanding negotiations, has been just concluded last week. Having met with the Honourable Prime Minister a few days before the Independence Day, and having expressed on behalf of NATUC with my team, and the Prime Minister team included the Minister of Labour, the Minister of Finance, and Minister Ganga Singh, and the team that met with NATUC to negotiate the outstanding negotiations, headed by the Minister of Finance. It also included the Minister Munilal and also the Junior Minister in the Ministry of Finance. And I think that that augurs well, right, for Trinidad and Tobago, because we in NATUC believe that an environment for growth and problem solving must be had in terms of having a nice industrial relation climate. Would
you say that our industrial relations climate is nice at this time?
No, let me know. There were a lot of issues, and let us face the fact, the question of the 5% cap, the imposition of the 5% cap, and the trade union movement resistance against it created the kind of atmosphere was not conducive to the same productivity and the competitiveness that you were talking about. And we attempted to impress upon the Honourable Prime Minister and her team the need to settle all outstanding negotiations that the government would have had jurisdiction over. Because while you were speaking to the Honourable Prime Minister, we pointed out to her that while you were saying that there was no 5% cap, there were several negotiations that were sent to the industrial court by the CPO, all right, with the 5% cap still intact.
So now that the table has been cleared, it's a clean slate we're now starting on. Obviously, a number of decisions need to be made as it relates to expenditure, revenue, generation capabilities. If we had to look at the announcements expected to be made today, how would the labour movement react if the Minister of Finance came and said, government, one of the largest chunks of our recurrent expenditure, wages in the public sector. How would the unions react if they had to say that tough measures need to be taken, wage freezes, similar to that occurred in this country in the late 80s? Would the unions be willing to take that?
No, well, then you see, you have to relate wage freezes in the context of the economic reality. If you are telling me to freeze wages, are we saying to freeze prices too? You cannot tell me to freeze wages and then there is no control on food prices because the government has no controlling mechanism as it relates to food prices and the other bread and butter issues that impact upon workers directly. So then we have to understand, because there's this issue about wage freeze.
Right.
We have to be very careful, because you remember, it's the workers who really produce and create wealth and also spend their money in order for an economy to grow. So that if you take away that purchasing power, you are actually shooting yourself in your foot economically.
What do you make of government's announcement about the removal of VAT?
No, well,
bread and butter issues. Let's talk about the cost of living.
Well, let us be honest in Trinidad and Tobago. The question of the removal of VAT is not a new issue. VAT has been removed on several items in Trinidad and Tobago. And it didn't have the effect that the government previous or present anticipated. In other words, the cost went up.
Right.
All right, so then you see Trinidad import almost 90% of the products, you know. And
right.
therefore, what happens in Trinidad and Tobago, the price is dictated not by what the government do, but what happens outside. And I could give you an example. If you go to the grocery now, peanut butter has gone up, cornflake has gone up, saltfish has gone up. So then to say you're removing VAT,
right.
and that will help the cost of living to go down is not an empirical fact. The facts on the ground to the workers and who have to go in the market and the grocery is totally different. So we need to find another mechanism to deal with the question of the ability of the business people to pass on their costs to the workers without any regards to the whole question of the VAT issues.
Do you have any confidence in the system itself, regulatory? Because, you know, we have had this issue before, and we've had unscrupulous business persons taking advantage of the system, one. So we have the removal of VAT, ensuring that, one, it is done, and that even the abuse of the BIR and VAT collection system. We now have a number of issues, a number of products that have been put on a zero-rated list. If our system is so inefficient with the numbers that exist now, how can we now add everything else on it?
Well, you see, this is one of the conundrums that we find ourselves in. Our problem in Trinidad is the question of a deficit implementation and a question of really dealing with the core issues. You see, we make statements without actually dealing with the real issues. And I think then the removal of that with the greatest respect based on our experience in the trade union movement, and I can talk for every worker in Trinidad and Tobago, does nothing substantially to cut the cost of the workers, and those workers who are on fixed wages, I mean, they suffer immensely. The question to me is, how could we, as social partners, as